who is on 519-732-2169 on the phone?
I believe that's Melba.
Oh, okay.
That's me, Hazel. It's
Oh, sorry.
Hazel.
Hazel.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Council. I'd like to note the time of 6:01. Also like to welcome the community that is tuning in via Facebook Live. We are at quorum, so I would like to call this meeting to order. Councilors will join as they arrive. So I'd like to begin by the identification of media, and I'll do my first call for Turtle Island News. I see Victoria, so I know her presence.
Hi, guys.
Is there anyone from Two Row Times? Second call, Two Row Times, hearing no one. So we will proceed to the second item. And looking for the adoption of the agenda. Can I have a mover to move the agenda? I see Audrey, second by Michelle. Is there any additions, amendments to the agenda? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor of the agenda? Any opposed? Seeing no opposed, that motion has passed to accept the agenda for January 26th. Next on the agenda, we have the opening address, Mohawk language. And what I'll do at this time is I'll turn it over to Amber Sky. Thanks for being with us, Amber.
Yeah. Ona se wada hunsios kanjokwa, ii kalihuandakwa, ne ohando kalihuadekwa, ne ganuholadunzala. Agwega Oscar and did a walkway nuni ne ungwatni gula, dahna diety nuholaro ne ungwe sua. 8 dohok ne ungwatni gula.
Yeah.
Agwega Oscar and did a walkway nuni ne ungwatni gula, dahna diety nuholaro ne yetini stoha ohonja. 8 dohok ne ungwatni gula.
Yeah.
Agwega Oscar under the Wahwe Nuni ne Ongwatni Gula, Dahno Diety New Holado ne Gahne Galunio, Jeet Yohanjade, 8 Neo Dohok ne Ongwatni Gula. Agwega Oscar under the Wahwe Nuni ne Ongwatni Gula, Dahno Diety New Holado ne Gunjuk Sua, Tkundi Nagele ne Awonge, 8 Neo Dohok ne Ongwatni Gula. Agwega Oscar and did a wahwe nuni ne ongwatni gula, dahno diety nu holado ne jinhekwa, dahno agwat gawari gawana ne honeste osaheda dahno ona onsala, 8 duhak ne ongwatni gula.
Yeah.
Agwega Oscar and did a wahwe nuni ne ongwatni gula, dahno diety nu holado ne onukwat sua. 8 dohak ne ongwatni gula. Agwega Oscar under the Wahwe Nuni ne ongwatni gula, dahno diety nu holado ne gahik sua, dahno agwat gawari gawana ne neo hundesa. 8 dohak ne ongwatni gula.
Yeah.
Agwega Oscar under the Wahwe Nuni ne ongwatni gula, dahno diety nu holado ne ojit noa ogua. 8 dohak ne ongwatni gula.
Yeah.
Agwega Oscar under the Wahwe Nuni ne ongwatni gula, dahno diety nu holado ne gundelio, dahno agwat kumwari gawana ne oskenundo, 8 dohak ne ongwatni gula.
Yeah.
Agwega Oscar under the Wahwe Nuni ne ongwatni gula, dahno diety nu holado ne galunda sua, dahno agwat kumwari gawana ne owata. 8 dohak ne ongwatni gula.
Yep.
Aguega Oscar and the Wahoy Nuni Neongwatni Gula, Dana Daiti Nuholaro ne Ojita Ogua, Dana Aguat Kuwari Gowana ne Adunyo Goa, 8 to Neondohak Neongwatni Gula.
Yep.
Aguega Oscar and the Wahoy Nuni Neongwatni Gula, Dana Daiti Nuholaro ne Gayeli Nigawalage, 8 to Neondohak Neongwatni Gula.
Yep.
Aguega Oscar and the Wahoy Nuni Neongwatni Gula, Dana Daiti Nuholaro ne Yunki Soto Ogun Aladi Welas, 8 to Neondohak Neongwatni Gula.
Yep.
Aguega Oscar and the Wahoy Nuni Neongwatni Gula, Dana Daiti Nuholaro ne Anchirawajia Galakwa, 8 to Neondohak Neongwatni Gula.
Yep.
Aguega Oscar and the Wahoy Nuni Neongwatni Gula, Dana Daiti Nuholaro ne Yiti Nistaha, Asuntaneka, Wenidale, 8 to Neondohak Neongwatni Gula. Aguega Oscar and the Wahoy Nuni Neongwatni Gula, Dana Daiti Nuholaro ne Yujisto Colonia Jit Galanhiade, Dana Aguat Gawadi Gawana ne Dayunda Hawita, 8 to Neondohak Neongwatni Gula.
Yep.
Aguega Oscar and the Wahoy Nuni Neongwatni Gula, Dana Danchirawa Nuholaro ne Sangwaya Disa, 8 to Neondohak Neongwatni Gula.
Yep.
8 to Nunt Galihwat Gweni Gina Hoda Galihwan Dakwa, Doga Oteno Gatni Goha, Owada Easy as a Watka Way Nega Nuhola Dunsala, 8 to Niga Wanage, Dana Ona 8 to.
Oh,
Yeah, we'll go, Amber, for the opening and the acknowledgement, and definitely bringing our minds together. Definitely
Yeah.
appreciate it. Okay, Council, we'll proceed and look to our next agenda item. And we have 4 delegations, 4 in total. So the first one is Grand Erie District School Board presentation on education special agreement. Just looking to see who would be leading that. Claudine, and am I looking to you to lead that
yeah.
discussion? Perfect.
Yeah, I'll introduce everybody.
Awesome. So what we have here is got about 30 minutes for the discussion. So I'll leave it to you in terms of presentation and dialogue back and forth. If required, I'll just do a quick time check in the chat, so I'm not interrupting the time. So
We'll keep on time. Okay, Nyawa. Tonight I have with me Joanna Roberto, who is our new Director of Education. And also we have Denise Martins, who is the superintendent with the Indigenous portfolio. And presenting tonight, where are you, Jeannie? I know you're
I'm
there
on.
somewhere.
I'm on.
Oh yeah, I see you.
Yep.
Okay, Jeannie Martin is our native advisor under the Education Services Agreement, formerly known as the Tuition Agreement. And so Jeannie's going to be taking it from here, and probably about 15 minutes for presentation, and then maybe 15 minutes for any questions. So I turn you over to Jeannie. Yawa, Jeannie.
Thanks, Claudine. Am I able to share my screen, Nathan? Yes?
Yes, double checking with Shirley. Shirley, do we have the share screen open?
It's available, yes.
It's available, so please proceed.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, am I on?
We can
I
see
see you.
Okay.
If just there we go, perfect.
Okay.
Now enough.
Okay, greetings, everyone. Thank you, Six Nations elected council members, for allowing us this time to present the 2019-20 Education Services Agreement. The team has been introduced. Thank you, Claudine. The Education Services Agreement for Six Nations students is an agreement between the Grand Erie District School Board and the Indigenous Services Canada that outlines the services, programs, and supports that are provided to students from Six Nations that attend Grand Erie schools. This report highlights the work of the 2019-20 school year specifically related to the progress of Six Nations students and the team whose work emerges from this Education Services Agreement. The Grand Erie District School Board has established the Native Advisory Committee as a committee of the board under the provision of Bylaw 8. The purpose of the Native Advisory Committee is to represent the interests of students from Six Nations of the Grand River Territory, to maintain quality educational services purchased through the Educational Services Agreement, and to ensure that the board members are appropriately advised in matters related to the education of the Six Nations students. And this slide shows the required composition of the Native Advisory Committee as outlined in Board Bylaw 8. And this list and the members that sit in these roles are identified in the report. The Six Nations trustee is Claudine Benevry Albert, tonight with us, is selected by the Six Nations community to sit on the school board as its representative. And on page 3 of the report, you will see a message from Trustee Benevry Albert. Additional supports provided to Six Nations students through the Education Services Agreement include the services of a Native advisor, 3 Native education counselors, and a community liaison worker. And the roles of these staff members are outlined on page 4 of the report. Under provisions of the Education Services Agreement, the Grand Erie District School Board provides high-cost special education services and equipment to meet the identified high-cost special education needs of Six Nations students within the existing processes of the board. Additional staff supports are provided to ensure the health and safety of students who have extraordinarily high needs related to their disabilities or exceptionalities. In 2019-20, Grand Erie District School Board employed 9 educational assistants to provide additional supports to Six Nations students with high-cost special education needs. The 2019-20 allocation of EA support is shown on this table here. To encourage and support the ongoing commitment to the restoration of Indigenous languages, as documented in the calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission Final Report 2015, the Grand Erie District School Board has implemented Native language courses in the Haudenosaunee languages, Mohawk and Cayuga, in its schools, utilizing criteria contained in the current Ministry of Education Native Languages curriculum guidelines. Grand Erie District School Board employs 2 teachers of Haudenosaunee ancestry for the delivery of these Native language courses. In addition, Native Studies courses are offered in all secondary schools. And these courses are available to all students of the board where numbers warrant delivery. Grand Erie supports the work to develop curriculum units and courses of study, which infuse Indigenous histories, knowledges, and worldviews, provides professional development for increased educator competency, and supports the implementation of learning resources that work to heighten the understanding of Indigenous histories, cultures, and worldviews amongst educators. The table on this slide shows the Native language and Native studies courses offered in 2019-20 and the student enrollment in each course. Six Nations students may choose from 6 Grand Erie secondary schools for which busing is provided by Indigenous Services Canada. Students can register at any other Grand Erie secondary school. However, transportation is not provided by Indigenous Services Canada to these other schools. The Native Advisor, together with the Six Nations federal schools, administrators, and staff, work collaboratively to plan and implement the Grand Erie Six Nations Transition Plan. Transition activities completed in the 2019-20 school year to facilitate successful transition of Six Nations students to Grand Erie secondary schools included secondary school information presentations in each grade 8 classroom at Six Nations, grade 8 days hosted at each of the Big Six secondary schools, secondary school information and special program information nights hosted at each secondary school, grade 8 transition meetings with grade 8 teachers at Six Nations, students and their parents, and joint collaboration at student IPRC meetings. The table on this slide lists the schools where Six Nations students were enrolled for 2019-20. The Indigenous Student Leadership Initiative is highlighted on pages 10 to 11 of the report. Since the Indigenous Student Leadership Initiative was launched 4 years ago, we have met all of the initial goals, which were to increase the number of schools participating in the initiative. Last year, we had participation from all 13 Grand Erie secondary schools. To increase staff and student participation in Indigenous Student Leadership Initiative events. To increase the number of Indigenous engagement activities occurring in participating schools. Creation of board-wide Indigenous Student Council. Indigenous student seats secured on Grand Erie District School Board Student Senate. And the establishment of Indigenous Student Trustee position. The Indigenous Education Team's focus for 2019-20 professional development was to prepare Grand Erie teachers to deliver the contemporary voices of the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit course. This compulsory English course that all Grand Erie students will take in grade 11 focuses on Indigenous content and Indigenous authors. Course content was developed collaboratively with the local Indigenous community and Six Nations. A year in the making, staff from across Grand Erie worked with community partners to layer in the local context of Six Nations of the Grand River and Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. The Indigenous Education Team further developed and facilitated 2 professional development workshops offered virtually during the COVID-19 shutdown, where 91 Grand Erie secondary school teachers participated. Grand Erie District School Board has developed a variety of innovative community-based education programs to meet the needs of Six Nations students who, for a variety of reasons, are not able to engage in a regular day school program. In 2018-19, the Nations, New Start, and ILA Turning Point programs were amalgamated into one location to create the Nations New Start Community-Based Learning Center. This new setting provided for more opportunities in experiential and culturally relevant learning for Six Nations students. In addition, Grand Erie provides 3 other programs located within the Six Nations community. The table on this slide shows the number of students served by these community-based programs in 2019-20. Page 15 of the report provides a detailed list of all the convocation and junior awards earned by Six Nations students last year. Pages 16 through 20 provide statistical data on student enrollment, attendance, credit accumulation, and EQAO results for Six Nations students. Some highlights from the data show in 2019-20, 466 Six Nations students were enrolled in Grand Erie secondary schools. A total of 64.5 of grade 9 students achieved 6 or more credits in 2019-20, putting them on track to graduate in the standard 4 to 5 year time frame. A total of 46.6% of grade 10 students achieved 14 or more credits by the end of June 2020 and are on track to graduate on time. Credit accumulation for students in grade 11 increased 10% in 2019-20 from the previous school year, resulting in a total of 68.3% of grade 11 students achieving 19 or more credits by the end of June 2020 and being on track to graduate in their cohort's timeframe. Similarly, credit accumulation for students in grade 12 increased from 42% to 45% between June 2019 and June 2020. A total of 67.3% of grade 12 students achieved 24 or more credits by the end of June 2020 and have graduated or are on track to graduate this year. Worth noting is that the attendance data does not include attendance between March 23rd and June 25th, 2020 due to the COVID-19 school shutdown. Grade 9 assessment of mathematics did not occur during the 2019-20 school year, nor did the Ontario Secondary School Literacy Test. The Ministry of Education waived the literacy graduation requirement for students graduating in the 2019-20 school year. We will now take any questions or comments.
Thanks for the presentation, and definitely noting some things here. So before we go to questions, do we ever get a copy of the actual agreement? I note that, and I didn't see it in the package, just for review and context. And second, I note that the majority of this was from 2019, 2020, is that correct?
Yes.
Last year, yes.
Okay. So in terms of the fiscals, that's how the presentations go. And forgive my ignorance.
Yeah, well, typically we do the report in the fall because we do include in that school year any summer school credits that students would have earned or any, because they do graduate are included in that graduation year. Okay. And then there's a process for us the report goes to our Grand Area District School Board for approval. And then we schedule a time to do the presentation to Six Nations elected council. So this report did go to Grand Area School Board in November. And as far as the agreement, the actual education services agreement being shared with council, I don't know if someone else on the team can answer that question because I don't know if it's shared.
Mm-hmm. Like as far as I know, and Julia would have to speak to this, I believe that Julia Candlish has a copy. If Grand Erie wants to have a copy, I don't see any reason why I couldn't send them one.
Well, I believe that if I'm correct, Nathan, maybe I misunderstood, but the question is, is a copy of the Grand Erie Six Nations Education Services Agreement shared with Six Nations elected council, because it's actually an agreement between Grand Erie and Indigenous Services Canada.
Right. Okay.
Is that the question, Nathan? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, we can follow up too with our federal counterpart as well. So I'm going to go to questions from council, and I have a list of hands.
Nathan?
I'm going to go Audrey, Michelle, and then Helen, and then Wendy.
Yes, two quick questions. One is, I noticed that BCI didn't have an EA. If so, do they not require one? Second question is that the chief and council have written a letter and we've asked for data for our Six Nations students. I'd like to know when that will be followed up for the data for us to receive. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Audrey. So EAs are allocated based on where students who have an identified exceptionality are enrolled. And so there are no special ed programs at BCI, and there were no students, Six Nations students who had an identification at BCI, so that's why they would not have had an EA. So the EA allocation changes year to year based on where the student needs are. As for the data request, it's my understanding that there is a process that is in place for the request of any data that is outside of the terms of the Education Services Agreement. And I do believe that that request is to be made in writing to the Native Advisory Committee. Anyone else on the team can step in if they have anything more to add.
It's
Director
Claudine.
Rivert.
Hi.
Okay, go
Yes.
Denise.
Go ahead, Joanna.
Oh, thank you, Denise. Yes, I have been in consultation with Claudine, and I will be reviewing that request, just following the process that Denise has shared with me, and we will be following up with respect to the appendix and the request for the data.
Yeah, Appendix 3 of the Education Services Agreement speaks of Grand Erie providing certain data to Six Nations on September 15th and March 15th. This year, the new tuition agreement was signed with that Appendix 3 request in. And due to COVID, it was a real struggle to get the data for September 15th. But now we're working a lot more closely to get the data for March 15th, and we're including Julia Candlish's office in this because it's her office that will need specific data for her study. So that's where that is.
Thanks for that, Claudine. I'm going to move quickly to Michelle in terms of your question.
Thanks, Nathan. I actually have a couple questions, and thank you, Nathan, for clarifying, because I was kind of surprised it was 1920, and I understand now. This typically comes forward every fall. I assume because of COVID, we are delayed. So Jeannie, thank you. And thank you, Grand Erie, for being on the call this evening. Jeannie, did you say that the Native Studies program is mandatory?
So this year, Grand Erie did introduce the grade 11 Native Studies course, which does count as a grade 11 compulsory course, as the only offering to grade 11 students, yes, for all students.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. And who instructs the course?
Grand Erie English teachers.
Okay.
And like I indicated in the report, we have done a fair bit of work around providing sample units that were written in collaboration with the community advisory team, and completing a resource list, again, in collaboration with the community advisory team. And we provided professional development and continue to provide ongoing professional development and support to English teachers as they as we roll out that course this year, the first year that we've introduced it as the grade 11 course and for all students. And so we're just finishing up the second quad of that course.
Mm-hmm. And are you looking to expand it to grade 9? Because I think everybody should learn about who we are, especially we're in this area and you have new credit in Six Nations. So yeah, we can further discuss that. My second question is the trends. So I know we've done a lot of extracurricular activity, a lot of support for our students. Are we seeing the trend of high school completion increasing? Secondary completion?
Well, I think that we do see the trends go up and down, but I do think we are moving in a positive direction as we see more students continue their studies. Even if they do get sidetracked, they do tend to come back. And we do have a number of programs that are available now to re-engage students and bring them back so that they can continue their studies toward their diploma.
Okay,
So
yeah, if I
I
can have
guess-
further information on that, that would be great. Nathan, I know we have only half an hour, so I'll ask my final question. It's more up to date. How are our students doing this year going through COVID?
I think that, you know, it's been a long time, and I think students, for the most part, have fared, you know, okay. I think their biggest challenge has been connectivity, and, you know, the community is addressing that, so that's good to see. And we also have been working with Six Nations, Jordan's principal office, to provide devices and for hotspots in the meantime.
What about the social aspect of it though? With the psychological, that kind of support?
If I may, it's Claudine.
Hi, Claudine.
I've been kind of watching what's going on all over North America with kids in high school and elementary school. And one of the things that's mentioned often, and it's the same way with Six Nations and Accredit kids, that they miss their friends. And some talk to their friends online, many don't. They miss the social aspect of their lives. But all in all, I would say that everybody's managing pretty well. And now we're just weeks away from being able to go back to what we consider normal once these vaccinations come out. And we don't know at this point what students will be able to access a vaccination. So that remains to be seen. So all in all, I think our kids are doing pretty much okay.
Who's getting it under 18?
What's that?
I'm not sure, Helen, what you said, but
Oh,
yeah, Claudine,
I was
really-
talking to myself.
Oh.
Yeah, I concur. I think that students are having, you know, challenges, but we do have we have staff who are reaching out regularly to students, either by texting or phone calling. Like, we're really working hard to stay connected to students and provide them support as much as we can, not just with their studies, but also, you know, just kind of with their social challenges and emotional challenges, and just with their mental well-being. I think it helps if they continue to maintain that connection with school somehow. And so we have been working hard to do that with our Native education counselors and our cultural mentors that we have on staff.
Okay. Thanks for that, Janine.
Thank you with my son. Thanks, Nathan.
Yeah, no problem. I'm going to move over to Helen, but just for clarification, the guidance on the vaccines are adults over the age of 18, only because children under 17 weren't included in the vaccination study. So there's some clarification on that. I'm going to move to Helen and then Wendy.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, in terms of the tuition agreement, in the years I've been on council, council's never seen the tuition agreement. We've never been given a copy of the tuition agreement to read or anything in the years that I've sat there. At the same time, I can't say whether council asked for it either. The process was just that the trustee sitting on the school board would work in closely with the people looking at, you know, going through the agreement. Because I remember when I sat there on the Native Advisory Committee, I sat in on the meetings with the tuition agreement as well with INAC. So I don't know if that's still the way it is now, but that's how it was when I was there.
Thanks for that, Helen. And good information and good background going forward. I'm going to move to Wendy.
Yeah, just on that, on the agreement itself. I mean, if Julia has it, then it should be no problem for us to get. Maybe Audrey can circulate that to the rest of us, given that the task force does have the mandate from the elected council. But I have a number of questions as well. So, and likewise with the reporting. So given the 1920 year, it would have been nice to see something in the current year that the report is being reported on. But in terms of the special education, looking at your information that you provided, I would like to see what is the trend. I know, Jeannie, you said that it's up and down. I'm not sure what that means, but hearing that there's no special ed requirements needed at, for example, BCI, I mean, that usually follows students. So that means over the past 4 years, there's been nothing. That's really good if we don't need any students requiring accommodation going to that particular high school. But it would be nice to see what's been happening, for the past 3 years and what the projection is moving forward. What I don't see in the report is any plan. What do the numbers say? What does your stats say so that we can increase services in the future? And I think really having a copy of the agreement so that we can review it and have a stronger place in that. Claudine, as I understand, you're our advocate for our students and advocate for, since you're the representative from the elected council, to be more involved in clarification. Audrey mentioned data requirements to make sure that that's flowing through. Maybe we need a stronger role in negotiating that agreement and what we need to make sure our students have everything moving forward. And in terms of students, and I heard Jeannie talk about some training that goes on for the English teachers in terms of the course. What about cultural competence across the board? What training is in place for staff at the schools, be it admin, whether it be management in terms of principal, vice principal, teachers, I guess looking at a proactive approach to systemic racism, because it's everywhere. So just wondering what's happening, because right now there's a big pivot towards land-based learning. So is there any movement in that direction based on the reports and based on the trends that you see? And lastly, you're reporting on that students are doing pretty well, not seeing a whole lot of issues. They're doing well. It would be wonderful to see what that is based on. Is that just anecdotal? Is that just your best guess? What is that? Do you have a tracking? Do you have monitoring COVID impacts? What are the trends so that you can actually track it based on data? So again, that pours into what are the future needs of our students to make sure it's there at the schools.
If I may, Wendy, many of your questions that you raise, or the points that you raise, are in fact attended to or being attended to right now by Grand Erie. One of the things that we really wanted to get was this September 15th and March 15th data, so that we could be telling people what's happening right away and not have to wait till this much longer. So we're really working right now to get that data for March 15th, and we'll be sharing it with council. I work fairly closely with Audrey. I see Audrey at many meetings throughout the week, and I work closely with Julie on the Lifelong Learning Office. Maybe what we need to do is set up a more fulsome reporting process to council on different days over the course of the year. I see that you do want more information, and that's good. I think certainly we can make some kind of a report after the September 15th and the March 15th report comes out. So I will advocate for that, make sure that comes out to the public. So there are a lot of things. If you would care to put some of those comments that you have in an email to me, I'll be glad to provide you with some fuller information in those respects. Now,
Thanks,
Nathan,
Andrea.
can
And I'm
I
not-
finish?
Yeah,
Can I
I'm not
finish?
sure that Wendy was finished her question, so I'm just
oh,
gonna
sorry.
ask you to mute yourself and I'll to work through the chair in this discussion so that folks can finish their thoughts, finish their questions, and I'll direct from there. So Wendy, I believe you weren't finished, so I'm just gonna apologize and go back to you.
Thanks, Nathan. I wasn't finished, but for the sake of time, I know being cut off, but I asked my questions. There's 4 people on this Zoom meeting, so I assume somebody wrote down the comments or the questions that I asked. So I hope you can follow up from there. But if it's being done, that's wonderful, but I certainly didn't see it in the report or I didn't hear it in any of your responses. So I look forward to seeing a more thorough report. Thanks.
Thanks, Wendy. And if there's no further questions, I'll say,
Mark, Mark, I mean, Nathan, I've been in meetings all afternoon, so my brain's kind of dead here. Nathan,
yes.
I don't know if it's a question or a comment, but I know somebody had asked, I think it was Michelle, wanting to know why they didn't have any, I don't know if it was Michelle, but they didn't have any EAs or anything at BCI, because I missed the first part of the presentation, but I've heard before that students who identified as needing an EA were highly encouraged, highly suggested they leave BCI and go to Tollgate. And that, you know, some of the kids were pretty upset because they had to leave the school and go to Tollgate. So I don't know whether that's why they don't need EAs, because they're sending all our kids to Tollgate if they need an EA. I'm not really
So-
sure how that works, but
So
this is what,
EAs
yeah.
are allocated to students who have special education
Yeah,
needs, which
yeah.
means they're actually identified through psychological assessment by psychologists that they have a learning disability.
I guess what I'm saying then is that our special education students at BCI, I'm to understand are being told to go to Tollgate, change schools and go to Tollgate.
Well,
That could
actually,
be why
Andrea,
BCI doesn't have none of our students as special ed. It's not right to do that.
BCI, only certain schools have special ed programming for any student. So BCI does not have special education classes for any students, nor does McKinnon Park. So that's why when we're going through the grade 8 meetings with teachers and parents, and we are meeting and discussing a student that is identified with an exceptionality, we do look at the other schools, and based on the student's exceptionality, we'll recommend a school that has a program specifically for that student's exceptionality. Does that make sense, Helen?
Not really, but I would think a student should be able to stay where they want to stay. If a student with exceptionalities wants to go to BCI, I don't see why they wouldn't be able to go to BCI. Why would they have to go to Tollgate?
Well, they can certainly go to BCI if that's their choice, but they will not have a special education program there for them. That's all.
I'm going to jump in because I have another question from Wendy. Wendy?
Yeah, and thanks for your question, Helen. That's one of the reasons I was asking about special education. It's rather convenient that the other schools have 2, 2, and 2. So it's very, very neat and tidy. So it would be nice to see what that's based on in actual numbers. But what Jeannie just described, I think, can be identified as discrimination. So maybe it's something we should look into and follow up on as the elected council. Thanks.
If I may,
Okay,
are you finished, Wendy?
I'm going to go, and I saw some additional hands up. We are a bit over time, so I'm going to start winding this discussion down. It's been a good discussion and we're noting a lot. Claudine, you had another comment?
Just one thing. Many years ago when EAs were first allocated to Six Nations student under the tuition agreement. I mean, this was like 25 years ago when that process started. Indian Affairs provided many EAs, like 18 or 19. Over the years, it has been cut back. So if there is any concern about the number of EAs, I think that needs to be taken up with Indian Affairs. And also, I think that in terms of the education study that's being developed through the lifelong learning office, that has to be identified as well. That's it, you know.
Thanks for that, Claudine. And I believe Wendy has identified and underscored that as a need for council and noted that. Just confirming with Wendy, I saw your hand up as well.
Yeah, I think this needs further discussion and maybe clarification, because if we're flagging this for future work, it's certainly for us to discuss at the elected council. But if we have a rep that we have on the board through a band council motion, then perhaps that rep can be advocating that and flagging that as well and working with us. That's the purpose of having a rep on there. But I think that's for us to discuss at council and see what our plan is. Thanks.
Okay, so noting that and underscoring that as follow-up on the council side. And I see no further questions, so I'm going to thank
Nathan, it's Melba. Nathan?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. One last question, if this is going to be the last. Yeah. Jeannie, did you talk about further staff that may be required once the children come back into the school system face to face? Will there be additional staff be in place? Because we know the fear and the concern of health is going to be continuing.
Okay, thanks, Melba, for the question. I think that is a very valid concern, and we've certainly been in discussions about the type of support that will be needed when our students are coming back into schools. This year, we had prepared ourselves with, I think I mentioned earlier, some additional staff, but in terms of, we have 3 cultural mentors on staff to provide direct support to students. Our board also has funding for a social worker for our students for this year specifically. And so that person would be providing additional support as well. I don't know if anyone else on the team wanted to add anything else.
Can I add, would they have dual roles then? Specifically the cultural component.
Well, the cultural mentors, certainly that is their focus, to support our students through culturally appropriate means. And they are all people from the community, so very familiar with, you know, our ways of doing things. And so I think based on my experience working with them, our students seem very comfortable with them, and they connect easily with them. So that culture component is there.
Okay, I'm going to move us
Thank
along.
you.
Because there are questions in the chat as well, and in community. Just a reminder, Facebook, this is Community Live. The first one is a comment. I don't think we're looking for a response, but it is a comment. I believe that it should be all language teachers that is teaching the culture. And I think that's in response to one of the points in the presentation. But I will go to one of the questions that is on the Facebook Live chat and thank the community member for bringing this forward. Is there any type of enrichment program for our students to help identify students who could be university bound to monitor and help them get there in spite of their surroundings?
I'm not sure what I know. I'm not sure I'm clear what the person means by in spite of their surroundings, but we do offer dual credit programs in the board, and those programs are designed as bridge to college programs. In addition, many of our secondary schools offer advanced placement programs, which are courses students can take in high school that are geared towards preparing them for university work. And our cultural mentors, again, I refer back to them because another component of their job is graduation coach for Indigenous students. So they bring that culture component to their support with the aim of helping our students clarify what their vision is for their future, and then helping them develop a plan and also transition as a part of that plan. So those are the different types of, I guess, programs and supports we would offer. And we work very closely with the colleges, our college and university contacts from the Indigenous Student Services offices. And, they are always looking at ways and programs and supports to offer our students. And through our connections, we try to make sure our students are well informed about those. So.
Thank you for the response. And thank you, Claudine, Janine, Joanne, and Denise for being with us tonight. Much appreciated in terms of the presentation. We did note some follow-up at the council side. We'll work with that and do that particular follow-up. But at this time, I see no more questions in the chat and no more questions from council. So I'll be looking for council for a motion to accept this as information.
Make a motion, Audrey.
Is there a second?
I'll second Melba.
Seconded by Melba. Having been moved and seconded, I look to council for all in favor.
Favor.
Is there any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, motion is passed. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Nathan and council, for hearing our presentation.
Thank you, ladies. Ona.
Okay, Shirley, looking to transition to our next presentation. I do note it is A6N waterline installation. Note the time, we're at 6:53. So we have allotted 30 minutes for this particular question. That'll bring us to 7:23. Who am I turning this over to? I'm seeing Matt. You look really eager, so I'm assuming you're turning this over to you.
Well, thanks, Nathan, and good evening, council. I wouldn't say eager. I would say happy to be here to present on this item. I know that we've been asked many times, A6N has been approached many times around questions around the process of quotes and waterline access. So in response to several emails that we've received over a period of time, the A6N team has put together a slide presentation, which we'll run through, and then we'll take questions after, if that's okay. So on the call tonight, we have Brian Johnson, who's on the call. He is the manager of A6N, and Daryl Hill, who is our superintendent for A6N. We have Josh Spiegel, who is a specialist that works with us for a number of projects that we've done in the community. And we have Randy Johnson, who is a community member who really heads up the waterline installation process. So Randy's going to present a PowerPoint slideshow and run through the procedures that we have now. And then if it's okay, Nathan, with the council, we'll take questions after. It's only 4 or 5 pages of slides, so we should get to it pretty efficiently. Okay?
Sounds good.
So Randy, if you want to take it away.
I'll get the screen to open up. Okay, I'll go through the slides here. So we got the Six Nations water service process. Our early stage initiation, our client pays Six Nations Public Works a $50 deposit to initiate quotations. Public Works notifies A6N when homeowners has paid deposit. Homeowner is now responsible for notifying A6N with the receipt of payment to initiate water service installation process. Our quote overview, upon receipt of $50 deposit, quote is generated by Google Earth and verified by site visits. Quotes are initiated on the following: whether the property is on the opposite side of the road, has the water main, long side service, or the same side, short side service. If the homeowner is requesting a full service price, water main to house, or a partial service installation, water main to property line. Other items affecting pricing include on-site existing services, existing landscape, type of house foundations, homeowner's preference, open cut or directional drill. Information is entered to A6N's estimating system. Once gathered, price is based on distance to and size of water main. Our quote details. Due to COVID-19, A6N has adopted Google Earth as estimating resource to minimize the need to visit homes. Google Earth is a satellite imagery program with multiple measurement functions, allowing our estimators to complete accurate takeoffs for water service pricing. Within the program, we can distinguish optimal running lines for water service installations. Once distances are recorded, A6N estimators carry out site visits to verify the proposed water main running line is sufficient for the installation. During the visit, our estimator notes the type of foundation, location of septic systems, locations of well or cisterns, and landscape that may be disturbed during the installation. Once all information is gathered, A6N estimators generate a specific quote for each individual property based on the specific consideration for that property. Note, with this customized approach, the price can vary from property to property. Once the price is completed, a copy of the quote is emailed to Public Works, and if provided to the homeowner. If the homeowner has not provided an email address, hard copies are made available for the homeowner for pickup or drop off. Post quote. Homeowner pays Public Works the quoted price. Once the quote is paid in full at Public Works, homeowners notify A6N with the receipt of payment. Water services are then scheduled based on equipment and manpower availability. Once scheduled, A6N requests locates through Ontario One Call Locates program. Depending on time of year or workload, locates can take up to 2 to 3 weeks. Materials are ordered and delivered to the A6N yard. Crew and equipment are organized once locates are completed. Our challenges are crew makeup, equipment scheduling, and private utilities. Options for Six Nations homeowners. Due to A6N's current workload, we would like to offer the following solutions to Six Nations community members. The purpose solution will allow community members to utilize other Six Nations Public Works preferred contractors to complete water service installations prior to expiry of A6N's warranty period for the Phase 1 water main project. Option 1, A6N will inspect the tapping process by the water service installation contractor for every water service completed from now until June 1st, 2021. Option 2, for predetermined fee, A6N will complete the water main tap for the hired contractor. This must be arranged at least 48 hours in advance to ensure A6N labor availability. Once A6N's warranty period expires on June 1st, 2021, any contractors Public Works deems as preferred will be able to price and install water services on the Phase 1 and Phase 2 section of the water main. And that's the end of our slide there.
Okay, thanks, Randy. And you were right, there was very thorough and efficient. But I'm going to turn it over to council, as I know there's a number of questions. Council, who would like to go first?
Right.
I see Helen.
Yeah, well, I was the one that raised the issue with council having to ask A6N to come to council because I was getting so many phone calls from people about the quoting process and how much it cost and how long it was taking. I just got a call from a girl probably last week saying that she had asked for a quote last summer or last fall, and she still hasn't heard from anyone. So I don't know if there's a communication breakdown coming from Public Works or A6N or the person, the people. There's obviously a communication something someplace because a lot of people aren't understanding how it works. So I really like the presentation that Randy presented. It's clear, it's concise, and it's short. And I think this needs to go out to people so that they know the whole process from beginning to end. Another concern that people were always raising to me was because it seemed people anyway, and it seemed to people that there's only two prices, 8,000 and 4,000. So everybody would question me like, why is there only two prices? What's going on here? So, and I didn't know. So I'm glad they've come and explained everything. But like I said, I really think we need to communicate on this and get something out to the community or to the people in the water line to say, this is how it works and blah, 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 what. I don't think they understand. They don't really understand much of anything as to what's going on.
Well, Helen, it's Brian Johnson here. Thank you for your question. I think what we'll do right away is write down the process on a single piece of paper. We can print out a bunch of copies. Once the homeowner pays at Public Works, we can hand them a copy of the process, so they have it. I think this will be a clear way. And they can go check by check or step by step as to what's to happen next. So I think that's a great point. You're right. It's probably a communication gap as to who's to do what next. And I think some information is getting lost. So I think that's a good starting point is if we can get the process written down. Maybe we have cards. Maybe we can the A6N team can take this away. Develop like a business card type thing with the process on the back, and it's just as easy as handing out a business card to the homeowner that pays the $50. Thanks for your question.
Okay, thanks for the question and the answer. And I see Wendy, so I'll turn over to Wendy.
Thanks for the presentation, and I agree. It was short, it was clear and concise. I do have a few questions, and I mean absolute no disrespect for the team. But since I've been on council, I've heard nothing but complaints and concerns and questions about the water line. And I think it's at many levels. Installation is just one of them. But this entire water project has been challenging at best, certainly for community members and residents. So I mean, we have to make this easier on community members to get water hookup. We talk about water, it's a national issue, people going without water, without clean drinking water. And we're making it near impossible for our own community members to get hookup. We're making it a financial burden to get hookup. We're making it a big process when it doesn't have to be. I've heard about the $8,000 installations. I've heard about the lines being cut. I've heard about all of that. So when I hear your presentation, I have questions about, I'm unclear the role of Public Works, why the $50 admin fee is going to them, and then on the quote and the pricing is being paid to Public Works, because that's additional admin and that's time and money to our department. So do we just pay A6N overall once for anything coming through? What is that administrative burden back and forth? And I guess in terms of how it's laid out, getting the quote, The locates are done after the quote is done. But depending on the lines and things like that, I would think it would impact the quote. So does that come into play if there's any problems with the locates? You know, June 1st, once that warranty is up, we are free and clear, and can we negotiate some other contract so that we can make it less expensive on homeowners, get hookups done, and just move this along? So, I mean, I've heard all of these questions, all of these issues, all of these complaints. So how do we make this a better process?
Well, I can speak a little bit to that, Wendy. I will say that the waterline project for A6N, it was challenging, you know, phase 1, phase 2. We have to appreciate the fact that this water main installation was installed by A6N with a crew that, you know, we had to learn as we went. But, you know, we're very proud that we have, you know, 96% of our employment base is from our home community. So we asked for patience as we went through the process. And you know what? As we got started, it was a little rough. But you know what? We did improve our capabilities as we went. You know, we did encounter some issues with directional drilling under one of the creeks on Chiefswood Road, which delayed the waterline installation. But you know what? That's water under the bridge, so to speak. The reality of it is we learned it was an exercise for A6N to grow, to build capacity in our community. And you know what? We appreciate the opportunity to do that work, and we look forward to doing more. The warranty issue is something that expires on June the 1st, 2021. On June 1st, 2021, any contractor has the capability to provide the service of accessing the water line. Up until that point, we have a warranty which we're liable for, so we need to make sure that the tap on the water main is done based on the specifications that are required, so that we don't get ourselves in the situation where we have to fix something that we didn't in fact undertake. And the administrative piece with respect to Public Works, you know, the consumer, the homeowner, pays for the water service ultimately through Public Works, and they have to have set up an account. The $50 fee is the cost to set up the account. And so they are, for all intents and purposes, and will remain the administrator of the water services as a water utility in our community. We're a contractor. Once we get notification that somebody wants water service, given the warranty considerations we have, we provide the bid, we provide the tap, we provide the work. But you know what? Our labor force, our payroll, it costs money, and we do that service, you know, to employ our people to make sure that the water service access is provided to the homeowner. But we can't do it for free. You know, as Randy pointed out in the slide deck, there are cost considerations. Alongside means that we have to directional drill under the road, which adds considerable expense to the homeowner. And that's no fault of the homeowner, but that's just the way the infrastructure was built. And some people's homes are on the right side of the water line and they don't have that cost, where others do. Every quote, I think, is unique given the dynamics of the property, the line, the distance from the home, from the road, and other considerations, as Randy pointed out. So, you know what? I would say that, yes, it's been a rough road. We've learned a lot. We are enhanced our capability to do this type of work, not only here, but in other communities, and we look forward to continuing to do that. You know, we're here tonight with a solution. We're not here tonight giving excuses. We're here tonight saying that we have an opportunity right now to look for A6N to say, listen, if Public Works and the council decides that they want to allow other contractors to put in water lines without using A6N, we can do that. We'll find a way right now for that to happen. And if that means A6N just comes out and inspects the tap work until June 1st, that could be the path of least resistance, and then we're no longer in the mix. But I would venture to guess that irrespective of that process, it could be difficult given the administrative work that happens with the exchange for the homeowner getting a quote, whether it's from A6N or anyone else, paying Public Works for that money, and then commissioning the work later. There is some challenges from an administrative standpoint on how the process was set up. But it wasn't our process. It was a process that we're complying with based on the platform that was put forward to us as the contractor.
Thanks for the response, Matt. And I see supplemental from Wendy.
Nathan, Hazel.
Okay,
Yeah,
we'll go to-
Thanks for that, Nathan. And I do appreciate the response, Matt. And as I said at the very beginning, I mean, no disrespect, and this is multi-leveled in terms of the issues with this whole project. You know, in the planning from day one, and I've raised it in council many times, that this should have been included in the overall project, hooking up the water line for homeowners. You know, so we're in the space that we're in right now, but I think we can do better, whatever that solution is. But I think council needs to come up with finding some funding as well. I've put this on the table before to help homeowners with these costs. We have elderly people in our community, we have young people in our community, and it's all about the people, whether it's the people working at A6N or the homeowners. But how do we make this happen to increase the service, to get the water line hooked up, to get that growth in capacity? And that's the place that I'm coming from. And at the end of the day, A6N, I mean, however we draw the lines, I mean, we're the shareholder for the corporation. A6N is under the corporation. So ultimately, it's us, right? So we should be able to find a solution and a funding solution to help with this. So that's where I'm coming from.
Agreed.
For that, Wendy, and I do underscore that yesterday, pre-budget sessions at the federal level were released, and definitely this is a priority issue for us in terms of the investment. So I'm underscoring your point, and as for follow-up, Wendy, in terms of our role in finding the money to help homeowners with this cost. So that's an action item for us to follow up on. With that, I'll turn it over to Hazel.
Yes, I would just like to make the comment about along the same line of what Wendy just said about getting more homes hooked up. I think we really need to look at something and come up with a plan on getting more of the homes on Six Nations hooked up to the water, because it's really difficult for a lot of people that have to draw water. And I think Randy's presentation was very good. And I just want to ask Matt, maybe, in consideration of if people go to another contractor to do the hookup, has there been any study or do you know if it's going to cost around the same amount from another contractor to hook up before doing the first?
Yeah, maybe I'll ask our A6N team to step in on that. They're closer to it than I am. Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, I can jump in, Matt. It's Josh Spiegel. We can speak to our pricing and what is comprised of our pricing from A6N specifically. So, you know, Acon Six Nations is a unionized contractor that, you know, we are subject to the union rates, which, you know, causes the increase amount over a non-union contractor. So with other local contractors not being unionized, that pricing could be lower for the contractor. If we were able to look at a larger project picture for water service installations, instead of having one here, two here, three this month, four next month, and we were able to sit down with council, propose a larger scaled water service installation, our pricing would be able to decrease as well. And we would be able to provide a larger scale, cheaper rate for council or for a funded project at that point in time.
Yeah, if I could just add, Nathan, council, Josh's point is valid, especially Linda, you had mentioned, I mean, if there's a way through funding or other means to which we can aggregate a contribution where we could undertake to do, you know, a whole concession, then you know, we can mobilize and achieve economies of scale through A6N to just bang through the whole concession in an efficient way. But right now it's sporadic, a job here, a job there on this concession, that concession. And for us to mobilize a crew, it costs money. And so that's why we have to price it accordingly. Ideally, we would have had, you know, the total capital committed up front to connect all homeowners, but I understand that's a pretty big chunk of funding.
Thanks for the question, Hazel, and thanks for the responses, Josh and Matt. Audrey, I see you, but I do have questions coming in from the community, so I'm going to acknowledge those. Before I go to those questions, though, I was reminded that there is a study, a water distribution study across departments being currently conducted as well. This is something we had motioned earlier as council, and that's being led by our SAO, Darren, in conjunction with Public Works and Health. So that is just tying that in as some work that we have motioned. So I'm going to go, thanks to the community member for this question. The question is water cost calculated per foot cost from the road to the house, or is it in a block sections like 0 to 25 feet per dollar? So much is 50 to 100 feet per dollar, another price. I'm far back and my parents at the right of the road and their price is $5,000, so I'm scared to find out what my cost would be.
Andy or
So-
John?
Yes. So the costs for the services are priced based on location. We need to come out, we need to be able to see what we're going to be getting into for each specific service. A longer service is going to cost, is inevitably going to cost more because there's more material cost, but it doesn't always mean that, you know, within 25 feet, one could be more than the other, depending on landscaping, depending on the foundation type, you know, the routing of the service, it all plays into the overall price. Now, you know, we can provide standardized quoting for pricing to the actual curb stop, which would be at the property line, and then from there, that's when the pricing varies, is after those property line distances.
Okay, thanks, Josh. And I think that responds to that question. The second question, I think we have responded to, but I am going to read it. Is there an installation program for people to access so it's not so financially stressful for them? We say our people deserve clean drinking water, but we need affordable access to it as well. So my read on that is that this was addressed by Wendy as a piece that council needs to go and advocate for and create that program and finding the resources to do that. So I think that we did discuss that, and that has been earmarked for council to action going forward. So with that, I'm going to go to Audrey and then Michelle.
Thank you guys for coming. It's nice to see you. Just my one way to start here is that our previous council had worked on this and started it, which was wonderful. And we're thankful for the water lines that we do have. And our priority was to get the lines out to all of the schools, which they now have. And we're very, very grateful for that. And all the people who benefit from it are on with water lines. So that's a good thing. But a couple questions in there. Is it possible when you do your information to the community to also include a diagram of what it is you're talking about? Hookups going under the road, shortcut, all the rest of the stuff. And then the fixed price for whatever it is. And then all the things that change that price, because that's what people are having a hard time with. And if you know up front that it depends on your foundation, it depends if there's trees in the way, it depends if there's how you have to route around them, and it increases the cost. So I think people, if they can see where their money is going and what the charges are, they're more apt to be a little bit more, I would say more understanding of it. But looking for a way, and we've said this before, is looking for a way to work with to get the price lower for everyone was something that everybody wants. So we'll continue to work on that. And those are my comments. And thank you very much. We do appreciate having water lines on Six Nations, though.
Audrey, it's Brian here. So thank you so much for your question. And to your point, I think what we need is obviously better communication. I think you're right. You know, if we can somehow, you know, during the quoting process, get the homeowner more information up front, so they don't have so many questions in the end or before they commit to the dollar amount. I think is key. So I think I will take this away with to my team to provide further information and communicate that to the homeowner requesting the water line or the water service. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Nathan, if I could, sorry, Audrey, if some of the councilors remember when the first initial tender went out, there was an ask of us to include the price to the shutoff valve, which is the edge of the road. When it came down to actually accepting and awarding the contract, Indian Affairs pulled that out. So there was something there you could negotiate back with them. Maybe some of the councilors remember that a few years ago.
Thanks for that, Daryl. I'm marking that down on the advocacy side too. So that's a good point. I'm going to turn it over to Michelle.
Thanks, Nathan. So 2 questions. When I first came into council, I was advised that the warranty ended in November 2020. So what has changed? Because I was telling community members after November, you can hook up and, it'll cost you it'll cost a lot less. So not sure what has changed, just clarification on that piece. And also we really need to, everybody said it, I'm just going to reiterate communication. And community members are messaging us or me, they're on the same side of the hookup, but it's $10,000 to hook up. So yes, we need some consistency. And if council, Nathan, we have a motion to do the water distribution study, correct? Or do we need a motion? Because I'm willing to make that motion that we look at this and.
Sorry. I'm noting that we've already motioned that, so that work's underway.
Can we have an update from Darren?
Sure. Darren, are you able
It's just
to?
really just getting started, Michelle. We looked at paying contractors to assist us with that. And unfortunately, Mike's not on the call, but he's part of that. Health is part of that. Social, housing. We're looking at water sources across the territory. We're looking at distribution lines that exist and looking at prioritization, as well as sources and uses of funds from all many sources, not isolated to any one source. So that is just actually going to start. We're looking at contracting them and getting the work started February 1st. But it basically is responsive to your question. But at the same time, we're looking at trying to get something in place that's longer term. This is not an overnight solution, as everyone knows. And we were just on Roma today, and we advocated very strongly for infrastructure dollars once again. So I was on the call with Mike this afternoon. So there are things that are heading in the right direction, and we have a lot of, I'll say, multiple lines of support and evidence for this project. And water is as you know, a social determinant of health, but it's so important. It's important for food security. We made all these points, so I think we're in a good place moving forward with that study to get some additional resourcing.
Thanks for that, Darren. And I'm just going to go back to Michelle. Are you good with that response? I got a thumbs up. I'm going to have 2 more questions. I have Helen and then Wendy.
Well, what I tell people when they call me, and I'm not really sure that it is a high price to get water. I think people are going to be disappointed when they come to find out if they hire somebody else that I don't myself think it's going to be much cheaper unless you dig the trench yourself with a shovel. I got a water quote 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago now, and it was $6,000. I anticipate if I got that same person to come and quote my water line today, it probably would be $8,000 or $10,000. So I just don't want to see people get disappointed. I think it's going to be they can find somebody really cheap. I don't think they're going to find somebody cheap unless they, get somebody that you can't really rely on. And that's what I tell people. I let them know what my quote was 6 years ago. And, it's not that far out today. So They may not get it as cheap as they think they're going to get it.
Thanks for that, Helen. And what I'll do is I'll go to Wendy.
Yeah, I want to go back to a comment that Matt made earlier. This is sporadic. The fees are high because it's sporadic. If we can negotiate something, if we can put something into action where we do large quantities at a time to reduce the cost, it will be better for community members. I argue that it's not a matter of lack of intelligence or lack of knowledge on the part of community members. They understand it. They can't afford it. It is expensive. And I don't think we're in a place as elected council to minimize any community perspective or experience of what's expensive or not. We have community members out of work, being hit with COVID still. We have young people, everybody across the board. So we have to look at that. It's absolutely, as Darren said, social determinants of health. So, we have to look at the level of poverty in our community. We have a lot of great things going on. We have a lot of success. We have a lot of things to be thankful for. Absolutely. But people have needs in this community. And it's our job to address those needs and to help them. I think we need to make a decision once and for all. Stop talking about this. Make it a priority. Subsidize the water line installations. Find the funding. We talk about a pre-budget submission. Well, this is it. Let's just do it. So it is an expensive target. It's easy across the board. It's easier to come up with solutions all around. I'm happy to make that a motion.
So I'd like to jump in here if I could. Wendy, it would be cheaper on a large scale for water service installations. It would also be cheaper for public works when these mainline water main tenders come out to include the services in the pricing at that point in time. I know the funding for the phase 1 water main was pulled because of budgetary reasons for the actual services themselves, but it's a lot cheaper when you're actually installing the water main to be able to put the saddle on and be able to take that water service to the curb stop when the trench is open, as opposed to going back afterwards, having to locate the water main, having to open everything back up again and put them in at that point in time. So it's something that needs to be negotiated, I feel, into those original contracts, and they need to stay in at least to the curb stop. And then after that point in time, additional funding, or however the funding system works at that point in time, could look at large scale water installations from the curb stop property line to the home at that regard.
Thanks for that, Josh. But there is a motion on the floor, so I'm going to go back and
Sorry.
My apologies. Just to get a clarification on the motion. So you're moving that council move forward with the advocacy and sorry, help me out with the wording.
So hopefully, I know we've got Darren and Dwayne on the line here, so maybe they can come up with some fast wording. But I think we need to make this a priority, that we access the funds to subsidize the water installation for community members moving forward, so that we can do the large quantity hookups, cut the costs, and help them out.
Thank you for that, Wendy. So it's been moved by Wendy. Can I have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Sherry Lynn. Having been read into the record and properly moved and seconded, is there any further questions on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Is there any opposed?
I am. I'm
One
opposed because I think we need to discuss this first, because there's COVID, got COVID, we have no money, we're not having no gaming money. I think we need to discuss it before we can make the decision that we're going to find money for all these people, because they're going to be sitting home depending on it. And what if we can't find it?
Okay, so we're noting your opposition, Helen. So 1 in opposition. This motion passes. With that, I'm going to take one more question, but I do have one more comment in the chat. Darren, last comment? Oh, sorry, Matt. Sorry, it's been a long day.
Sorry, there was a question that I don't think we answered, and that was around the warranty period that Michelle had raised.
Right.
So I don't know, Josh or Brian, if you want to tackle that, which was originally, I think, November 2020, and now it's June 1st, 2021. Can you guys comment on that, please?
So Michelle, with substantial completion and the Mackenzie Creek crossing, so the Mackenzie Creek crossing took longer than anticipated, and that inevitably pushed our substantial completion for the project. With COVID and everything jumping in at the beginning of 2020, the resolution for our substantial completion didn't get verified until June 1st, 2020. So that gives us 1 year from substantial completion, and that's why we're pushed out to 2021 now on the warranty period.
Thanks for that clarification, Josh, and intervention, Matt. 2 comments in the Facebook chat, and thank the community members for that. The first comment is water is the #1 priority issue for every First Nation. Water should be a priority in any funding that comes in. So I think that ties in line with the motion that we just passed and brought forward by Councillor Johnson. Second question is just another clarification question specific to what is the cost for bringing the water line under the road again? So just a quick answer on that. That's coming from the community.
Josh?
Yeah, it's Brian here. So it all depends. The road, every long service takes into consideration the width of the road, ditches on each side. So really it all depends. Every quote is different, whether we could be crossing to a homeowner on Chiefswood Road, where the road is a lot wider than it is on, let's say, Seneca Road. So it just all depends, and that goes into our quote considerations on an individual basis.
Okay, thanks for that. Final question. I'm not sure if anyone can answer this, but how does off-reserve towns get water lines hooked up, and who pays for that? Go to Matt.
Taxes.
Taxes. That's
yep. Property taxes pay for the infrastructure, and commercial user and industrial users, they all pay. And you know what? Housing developers, they all pay development charges. Development charges are something that's paid up front as a capital investment into the project, and that provides the funding for the municipality to bring the water line to the lot line. And then the tax base continues to service and provide the maintenance for those lines. That's not something that we have here.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay, this brings us to the end of this presentation and this particular agenda item. I thank all of our presenters for being here with us. We do have a motion in place, so I don't think we need to motion accepted this as information. So with that, I'll thank everybody, and we look forward to our continued work and advocacy on this.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Council, as we look to transition to our next item, I do note the time. We're at 7:33. We're about 25 minutes behind, not bad. But I do want to transition to One Nation Farms. There is a letter in your kits in each of your drop boxes. And I look to Ben McDonald to see if he is ready to go. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ben. Good evening, Ben.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for talking with me. It is getting a little late, so I do have 2 different presentations. One's significantly shorter. The other one's more information based on vertical grow systems. Is there a decent knowledge base within council to understand the vertical grow systems, or should I go in and do a brief presentation on that?
I have a knowledge on it. I'm not sure where council's at, so I'll look to where council's knowledge base is on that and see where they're looking for. So just a quick survey. Do we want the short or long version?
Time-wise?
Yes.
Short version.
Okay, there we go.
There we go. Okay. Let me just exit here. Okay. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me. I'm here today to hoping to get a BCR in support of my business, One Nation Farms. As urban sprawl and global populations grow, we need to reassess our cultivation practices. In a world going through climate change, resource depletion, global pandemics, we need to secure our food sources and production capabilities. We are seeing a significant reduction in the number of young people participating in the agriculture industry. And I think that by bringing in new technology down to the ground level and make our cultivation efforts in Six Nations more effective and efficient by the introduction of these new technologies. We are continuing to lose significant amounts of fertile land and water with dangerously fast-growing populations. Let's begin addressing our sustainability at home and preparing to help those around us. One Nation Farms is a food program based in Six Nations. We look to introduce new growing methods that are proven to be more eco-friendly and harmonize well with our beliefs and community plan. This is especially, I want to bring this technology to this industry that really hasn't seen a significant upgrade in decades. The main aspect of One Nation Farms is the utilization of vertical farming techniques and technologies. Vertical farming and indoor farming provide the opportunity to grow sustainable produce year-round. This is especially important in Southern Ontario, where we have limited growing season, and the bulk of our produce that we buy in grocery stores come from imports and international. We think that having One Nation there is going to give us a distinct local advantage over those other produce. Not only are we going to provide higher quality food, but we're hoping that we can provide it at a much more affordable price. The hydroponic systems that we use allow for precision in growth times and projected outputs, giving us the confidence of long-term sustainability. One Nation Farms prefabricated facility was designed to be operated in the most remote and harsh climates. One Nation facility needs only to be connected to a power source, have access to water, and it can be taken online. If a water connection isn't available to be directly put onto the container, we're actually able to fill our reservoirs in the facility, and they last anywhere between 4 and 6 weeks. The container uses approximately 2,200 liters of water a month, with the reservoir holding 4,000 liters. And to kind of make a comparison, the average person uses 3,000 liters monthly, and a household of 4 will use 12,000 liters. Vertical farms use 0 pesticides. They use 90 to 99% less water, fertilizer, and they reduce the footprint of land used. These types of systems provide high quality foods while also being incredibly productive. Once fully operational, our farm will have the capacity to produce more than 22,000 heads of lettuce annually, or 400 plus heads a week. So I am seeking a band council resolution in support of One Nation Farms, its efforts to enhance local food security, access to healthy, affordable foods, and in support of our efforts to secure funding for this project.
Okay, thank you for that, Ben, and that's definitely the short version of it. I'm going to turn to council to see if there's any questions. I'm going to go to Michelle.
Thanks, Ben. And so who are you working with in the community to do this? Because council's been approached by different entities in our community with respects to the same ideal. And so I feel our council, we're really looking to work together as opposed to silo again in food production, food sovereignty. So can you elaborate on who your partnerships are with?
My partnerships are just with myself. The design I took was to be operated by a singular person, which would be me or one other employee. And I don't really look to go into the agriculture market to compete with anybody. What I'm really looking for is to work in conjunction with everybody, because when we're trying to tackle something like food security for our people, I don't think that a singular person can get this job done. And I think it's a collective effort that we need to be making together. I'm not aware of any other farms of this type happening, but if there are and you can point me in their direction, I would love to connect with them.
Thanks for that response, Ben. And any further supplement, Michelle?
No, I would just say, we've had, Nathan, the farmers, there's health services, there's the like there's just a number of people. So I would say that homework needs to be completed first.
So just the context there for you, Ben. One of the areas we're working on is a strategy on food sovereignty. And the pandemic really pointed us into that direction of harnessing all of the individuals in the community that, either were employed through health services, the farmers, or even volunteers to come together and bring their knowledge and their expertise together to look at better ways for food sovereignty and food security. So definitely invite you, we have been meeting to look and share ideas with each other. And I'll make sure, if you're willing, that you come and be involved and share your ideas as well, to look at that broader piece. So I think that's what you're referring to, Michelle? Yeah. Okay, so with that, I see Audrey as well. Audrey, you have a question?
Well, I was going to say the same thing as Michelle, and that you were saying. We already have a lot of this on the go right now, and for food sovereignty, and there people have been working on this for a long time, like the Farmers Association has been working on food sovereignty as well as health for the last number of years. And I think that instead of reinventing the wheel, I think we should all be working together collaboratively. So I'd like to make a motion that we accept this for information and then ask Ben to work with the food sovereignty group. So I make a motion to accept it as information.
Okay, thanks, Audrey. But I just want to loop back. I know, Ben, you didn't, and I feel you should have an opportunity to at least let us know what you wanted by way of a motion. So if you could have some thought around that. I just want to make sure that you leave here with what you need as well, and we go forward. But Ben?
Yeah, so the requirement for a BCR is something that I've come across from an array of different funding opportunities. So I've connected with Futurepreneur, BDC, Farm Credit Canada, IAPO, the federal government, the Indian Agriculture Program of Ontario, the Indigenous Pathfinder Program, and even the bare minimum, I need a letter of support to get any funding whatsoever from any type of organization. If there's a project happening on Six Nations, I don't have the avenue or the capacity to be able to fund it myself. I'm needing to go out and get grants, and that is a requirement on every single application I've seen is a BCR. And I'm not really understanding why having more people work on the same project is different. Like I said, I can't really work collaboratively with somebody until a program is up and running, unless they have a funding avenue. I don't really know how to go about it.
Yeah, and from my perspective, it was just a knowledge base to let you know that there is a group that are working on food sovereignty, and it was not a mandatory invite, but just an invite if you're interested. So that was where I was coming from my perspective. So with that, I'll turn it over to Helen.
Yeah, it's my understanding Ben's looking at starting a business in vertical farming. And I can understand him needing a BCR because this has come to council a lot of times over the years where people wanted to access some kind of a program and they had to have a BCR. So I have no problem supporting a BCR for Ben if that's what he wants. In order to get the funding to start his business, he can't, like you said, he can't work collaboratively with food sovereignty people in our community until he gets started doing what he's doing. So it's a business he's trying to start.
Thanks, Helen. And that's the clarity I was looking for in terms of getting that back to Ben. So with that, I know there was a motion on the floor. Audrey, are you still comfortable with that particular motion, given what Ben was looking for?
I guess the other concern I have is that the name of it. Is this a cannabis place that you're operating from?
It's a completely different entity. One Nation Farms is purely in produce production.
So that will be in the VCR?
Yeah, that's why I made it One Nation Farms. That's not One Nation Cannabis.
But it'll be only for food.
Only for food. I honestly, I wouldn't be able to get funding for anything else. The federal government and all the other funders out there do not fund cannabis, especially in First Nations.
Thanks for that clarification, Ben. I see Wendy, you had your hand up as well.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I lost track. Did we get a seconder to Audrey's motion for information? I mean, I support that. I mean, I certainly support anybody who wants to go into entrepreneurship and start their own business. And certainly food sovereignty is one of the priority areas that we've talked about. And as I can't remember who said it, we've heard numerous presentations on food sovereignty and sustainability. So, I mean, I would certainly encourage as well some sort of collaborative discussion. I don't know that health services is not looking at this type of growing. I don't know that the Farmers Association is not looking at this type of growing. So if we go ahead and give the BCR, are we competing against one of our own departments as well if they're looking for funding in that direction? And if we are just, as Helen said, supporting a business, then I would expect to see more than this in terms of a business plan, so that we know exactly what we're supporting going forward. So it doesn't come back on us. So it's just that transparency and accountability as well. That's asked of us. And I think if we're going to make a motion, then it's got to be based on the information so that we can make that informed decision going forward. But to accept it as information, and then just if there's some sort of collaboration that people can have, it would be great. And then maybe bring it back once that's done, and then we can look at it then.
Okay, so there's the direction I was looking for. So Wendy, are you seconding Audrey's motion to accept as information and do the collaboration?
Sure.
Okay, so mover and seconder. In terms of this, I believe what council's saying, Ben, is we're accepting this as information. Some due diligence will be done on both parties, and we'll revisit for the exact BCR that we're looking for at your end.
Okay. Would that include the submission of a business plan? I've been unaware that that has been a requirement from any other business to receive a BCR.
Nathan, I don't think council's understanding. He needs to get a BCR in order to submit whatever it is he's got to submit. We've done it umpteen million times since I've been a counselor, that when people want to access funding for some kind of a program, they have to have a BCR from council. It's just to access, to put in a proposal and trying to access the funding. He might not even get it.
There's
But they need that BCR to get the money. And it's not him doing it, it's the funding sources telling him, you got to have a BCR from council in order to submit your proposal and ask for money. And he, like I said, who knows, they might turn him down. I don't think you're understanding what he's asking.
Go to Wendy.
Contrary to Helen's comments, I know exactly what I'm asking, and I know exactly what I'm saying. So I do understand it. For me, perhaps councils in the past, councillors, they don't require any information, but for myself, and that's what I'm speaking on, I would certainly like to see more information if I'm going to make a motion on a business going forward, because basically we're putting our name behind that business venture going forward. So I'd like to see a little bit more to it. And I just want to know that, you know, if there's an opportunity, perhaps there's somebody else that's doing that in the community. If it's one of our own health departments, maybe you can partner with them. Maybe there's money already there that can help your business get started. That's where I'm coming from.
Nathan, it's Melba.
Okay, I'm going to go to Melba, and then I'm going to acknowledge a comment in the chat, and then I'll go to Darren.
Yeah, thanks, Ben, for coming forward with your idea. But as councilors have said, this is now at the discussion levels in this community concerning the farmers, and as far as I know, is health too. So it probably is necessary for you to be in touch with them to see how the possibility of working together. We don't want competitiveness here where people are competing with one another. It's not a good thing. We have it already happening, the diversity that's really causing a lot of trouble. So we want partnerships with each other to gain strengths and go forward with one mind in what's good for the people. And they will say the food sustainability is good for the people. So if you could do that, that would be great. And then come back along with maybe doing a presentation with health as well as the farmers. Thanks, Ben.
Okay, thanks. And Darren, I see you're mentioning that you can help with this, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Just a suggestion, and I'm not in any way disagreeing with the motion that's on the floor. I think what may provide a pathway or a phasing for this would be to look at considering providing a letter of support to do a feasibility study. And part of the scope of work on a feasibility study is to connect with what is happening in the community, do the environmental scan, what has been developed, what has already been looked at, and how could it potentially assist in meeting our food sovereignty needs. For me, that's phase one, and that's all we'll be doing at this point. So I just offer that as a suggestion.
Okay, thanks for that, Darren. Before I saw you, Ben, I'm going to go to the chat. This was from a community member. Respectfully, Six Nations elected council has no right to attempt to distinguish private business ventures in order to keep funds in the hands of band council only. So that is coming from the Facebook chat. Thank the community member for raising that. And with that, I'll go to you, Ben.
I don't really know how to go about it because I keep saying that I'm more than willing to partner and everything. Like I can't even get a loan to purchase land without a BCR. Like I can't do anything financially wise without a BCR. And I've connected or reached out to a number of different organizations and associations within Six Nations and have not gotten a response. Even this own presentation here, I submitted this in March of 2020 when COVID had just started, and I didn't get a response from council at all. I don't really know what to say, to be honest with you.
Nathan,
I don't know what to say. I don't understand how I can't get support in something that connects with over 15 different points within the community plan. I don't see how enabling me to go after funding has any impact on any council operations. And the thought that it would be competitive, I see competitiveness differently. I see competitiveness as growing better products. I see it as providing more cost-effective produce. And I see it adapting more creatively to the community to make sure that the produce that we are growing is able to get to people in a timely manner. I can understand the position, but I don't understand it at the same time.
Yeah, here's what I'm going to do, Ben, to close this discussion off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to work with you offline, and I'm going to do the due diligence and get the certainty that council requires in terms of the due diligence that and the questions that were raised by Councillor Paulus-Belmbre and Councillor Johnston. And what I'll do next as a next step is once that certainty is provided and that communication, so I'll funnel through and I'll act as that liaison. Once that clarity is provided and we're good to get that BCR, then we'll invite you back in and work on that. How does that sound?
It sounds good.
Hazel.
Okay, Hazel, we have to move forward on this, and I think I found a solution to get us to moving forward on this. So I'm noting the time. Ben indicated that my proposal sounded good, and so I'm going to turn over for one more comment to Hazel, and then I'm going to close this discussion off.
Okay, I just wanted to make a comment to Ben that the Six Nations agricultural group, the farmers, I would connect with them because they're into the same idea that you're thinking. Theirs would be the normal planting in the ground, and yours is vertical, but you still basically have the same idea. So I would connect with the president of that farmers is it Jesse Porter?
Jesse, yes.
I'm not sure. I would speak with them, and they've done a lot of work in the same area. So maybe getting some information to them as well will help what you're intending to do. And good luck with it. It sounds like a good.
The system we have, it's pretty much self-operational. I don't really need any help there. Support would be great. Collaboration would be great. But I am looking for a BCR so I can go after funding. This doesn't have anything to do with information, really. I'm at the point where I'm ready to go after funding, and the BCR is on every single application. I've already noted it to many different government officials that I find it to be discriminatory, but it is what it is, and this is the world we're living in at this point. Like, I can't explain it any other way than my hands are tied at this point unless I get a BCR, and I don't see how connecting with any other organizations or associations is going to help me get the funding. I've already reached out to these people. They're obviously not interested in working with me, so I'm here today to ask for my ability to run my business the way I would like to, and for support from the community, understanding that I plan on giving back to the community.
Okay, so what I'm suggesting is, again, I'll do the due diligence and I'll act as the liaison to get those questions answered as it relates to what was raised by a number of councillors to get that clarification. And definitely what I'll do as soon as this meeting's done, Ben, I'll email you, set up a quick call between you and I, and we'll work through it that way. My objective is to get you your BCR. So with that, there is a motion on the floor to accept this information and ask the mover and seconder that I be directed to work with Ben on the due diligence. Moved. Seconder, are you good with that? Okay. Having been properly moved and seconded, no further questions. I go to the vote. All in favor? Any opposed? One opposed, noting Helen Miller is opposed. With that opposition, this motion has passed. Thank you, Ben, for your time and your presentation, and I will follow up as soon as this meeting's done. With that, I look to transition into our next agenda item and thank council for their patience and thank Sherry Anton for your patience. I know we are over time. But with that, I turn it to you and introduce this topic. Forgive me, where are we? The interim committee policy at the Chiefs of Ontario. So I did give context yesterday, Sherry, with council. So they do have a little bit, but I turn it over to you for your presentation. And note, council, this is in your Dropbox. The information. It is a memo from Chiefs of Ontario marked interim policy on Assembly of First Nations committees and councils. So Sherry, take it away.
Siguli, thank you, and Nathan, and thank you rest of council for allowing me a time on this agenda and to present the interim policy. I hope everyone has had an opportunity to scan over the document, but I will provide first just a context of who I am. So I am currently the Chief of Staff for the Ontario Regional Chief and support the Leadership Council and all of our political decision-making as a political decision-making body. The interim policy that is being presented to you today came as a result of the need for more transparency, more accountability from all of our elected leaders, as well as technicians in reporting back to our Leadership Council, as well as to our caucuses or special chiefs assemblies, as well as directly to our PTOs, independent First Nations and non-affiliated First Nations on all activities and discussions that are occurring within AFN committees. So this policy is specific to the AFN committees and councils that are currently established and mandated by the National Chiefs and Assembly. The policy that you have in front of you is the second version that has been drafted. And I have been asked to go and seek input from all of those who sit at the Leadership Council, which is why I did reach out to see if I would be invited to come and make a presentation. I have had, in terms of discussions already with the Grand Chief of AIAI, with Anishinaabe Nation, some members of the Independent First Nations, and the political and technical reps for the Anishinaabe Aski Nation. At this time, Grand Council Treaty 3 has determined that they do not have any issues with the existing version of the interim policy, so there's no request for me to meet with them. And I am still waiting to hear from Akwesasne to see if they would be interested in having any sort of input on this policy. So once these are concluded, I will be making revisions to this document based on what I have heard, and it will be provided back to all of the Leadership Council members to provide further input if necessary, or to take back to their communities or councils, however they so choose. Just so you're aware, both AIAI as well as the Anishinaabe Nation have indicated, actually, and the independents have indicated that they would like this interim policy, once revised, to be presented to their councils within the month of February and March. So the time frame to have this document completed and to be formalized or formally adopted by the Leadership Council is for the end of March 2021. Are there any questions at this point on the document, or would you like me to walk through the document with you?
Turn it over, Council. I don't see any questions. So Sherry, I just suggest we just go through the document really quickly. Folks have read it, so we can probably just rush through it really quick.
Certainly, thank you. So the standard items that you do see on the draft that you've been provided are the purpose. The area on definitions is something that is slightly new and was added since it was first presented in February 3rd of 2020 to the Leadership Council, which you do see here. The next section is about qualifications, and then we do go into other areas around accountability and reporting processes. I am going to stop there because what I do want to acknowledge are some of the suggested changes at this time and items that I think should be considered further. So in particular, one area that was requested by Anishinaabe Aski Nation is to clarify the role of Chiefs of Ontario, and in particular the directors of each of the sectors, and regarding their support, technical support for those elected officials who would be sitting at an AFN committee. So the suggested approach at this time and the suggested amendments to the version that you see is to include a section for the Chiefs of Ontario, and to highlight that each of the directors is to provide a that technical support by way of either having regular monthly meetings to maintain an update from the technical side to the Chiefs Committee side, as well as to provide speaking points or briefing notes as necessary in order to keep that individual informed so that they can be effective at that table. Another issue that was brought to, Sorry, I thought I saw someone's hand.
Yeah, Wendy?
So I have a couple of questions. One is laying all of this out. And you talked a little bit about it. What about the evaluation and the monitoring? Whoever is sitting at these tables, whoever is in these roles, what is the ongoing evaluation and monitoring? Because we've had people sitting there and wearing a different hat, I mean, attending some of the AFN meetings, I mean, we have people who don't show up. We have people that don't report back, that hold portfolios and, you know, at a very high level. And I won't name names, maybe Nathan will, but I'm not going to. So how do you evaluate that? And because if they're not doing that, if they're not serving that purpose, then why do we have, because we're losing out from an Ontario perspective, and certainly from a community perspective. And I'll raise education as an example. How does this apply to education?
Mm-hmm. So for instance, these are really great questions, and thank you, Wendy, for posing them. First, just to identify the evaluation and monitoring process. We know that this is a challenge, and it's a consistent challenge, and we see it more about it's more becoming an apparent challenge because of the appointment process. Generally, the way in names come forward is through the Grand Chiefs, and each of the PTOs and our respective non-affiliated communities do have their own vetting process in terms of how they would like to determine someone to come forward. However, we don't have accountability measures at this point because there is no policy. What this is intended to do is to remove the appointment process in the way that it is currently, and to put a call out to those who are going to be interested in filling these roles, as well as identifying why they're interested and what their qualifications are in order to make them an effective voice at that table. We want to ensure that there is going to be someone who is knowledgeable in a particular area, such as education. The accountability piece or the monitoring piece is the reporting process that we are suggesting to implement. As you can see on page 2, no, sorry. On page 4, you would see roles and responsibilities of appointees. So there has been much discussion on this, but what you can see here is that we would want that individual to ensure that they are reflecting the mandate or vision of Chiefs of Ontario, that they are to always have an alternate to attend if they are not able to attend, that they have to report to the Leadership Council within a 30-day calendar timeframe. We've expanded upon that idea through discussions that this also should include reports back, as I said, to the chiefs in assembly at our AOCCs or our SCAs, as well as to our specific body members who sit at the Leadership Council, so that there is an ongoing dialogue and that we are either having a verbal update as well as a written update. The attachment, which you see is Appendix B, outlines Appendix C outlines the reporting, what we're suggesting to be the reporting process, or what we're looking for in terms of information. So it would have what council or committee are you sitting on, providing the dates, times, last report, summary of the meeting, issues, and etc. So this is more or less what we're seeing as the accountability piece, in addition to, if you look at Appendix A and B, these would be an oath of office. So that would be the primary tool to hold the individuals who are looking or seeking a position of appointment on a AFN Chiefs Committee or Technical Committee to sign and agree to an oath of office, so that they are holding themselves accountable while being a participant on these tables.
Yeah, Wendy.
Unless I miss it, so is there, if you miss 2 meetings, then you're removed from the seat, like in terms of that accountability piece? Because I mean, those reports do happen at the assembly, right? They report on the different topic areas, but that doesn't mean they attended all the meetings. Or if they showed up for 5 minutes and then left the meeting at the AFN. So the interests aren't being covered there. So I think that accountability is a big piece, and that's a huge gap if it's not concrete in this. I certainly see what you're trying to do with, you know, Section C, but I think there needs to be some stronger language embedded in the front end of that. And I've raised education because right now, the Chiefs of Ontario unilaterally opted out of the AFN process. So now you're looking at a bilateral, right? So you're looking for post-approval on that action. So that's why, so what happens with that?
Well, I think that's a very good question as well. And it is certainly a political decision that was made by the regional chief based on information that we received from the technical rep as well as the political rep that sits on CCOE. All of the reporting has gone through the Leadership Council by the regional chief as to why that decision was made. And if this is going a bit off topic, but just to give you that insight, is that there are challenges that Ontario is facing while sitting at the tables within the AFN. And those challenges are related to voting practices. Where there is a limited amount of funding, obviously, for many different projects, and where votes tend to favor more money going to different regions and taking money away from Ontario. So that is the issue at hand.
So I know the why. That's why I raised it, because that creates an issue then with this process, right? On one of those key areas. That's why I raised it. I know the whole background of the why. I'm not saying I don't support it. I'm just saying it's looking, if you're going to do this, you need to look at all of those.
Those factors are, yes, I understand, and I can definitely look to including stronger language on how the some of the items that you've identified is including the need to ensure someone is going to be sitting at that table. How do you make sure that they're actually going to be attending those meetings and reporting back? But the piece that you're talking about in terms of the political decisions that are made don't rest here with that individual. So the individuals who are sitting at these tables do not make decisions themselves to pull out of any sort of process. That still remains a high level political decision. And at this time it rests with the regional chief and was supported by the Leadership Council.
Thanks for that, Sherry. And just jumping in on that one too, really quickly too, I think I'd underscore that, you know, the consequences need to be front and center for me in any documents like this. And I think just supporting what Wendy was saying also, you know, if you do miss 2 meetings, you're out. And it's just as simple as that, right? I think, you know, those, and I'm only speaking from the experience of me being there as well, you know, portfolio holders that do sit at the AFN has to take that job extremely seriously and you know, be attentive, take notes, and be there from start to finish. Because, you know, if we were as a technician, when I was in a former role as a technician, that was expected of me, and I expect that as well in this role as a counselor of those regional reps that go and represent at the regional level. So I'll leave it there because I could get myself in trouble, but I'm going to leave it there and turn it back over to you, Sherry.
Yes, thank you. And I please feel free always to be open about any sort of areas that you think that this needs to be strengthened on. My purpose of being here is to hear that feedback and to be able to strengthen this document so that it is supportive and reflective of all of our members who sit at the Leadership Council table and supporting our communities more broadly as elected officials and technicians.
I'm just gonna, Sherry, do you have more to present, or is there any other councilors? Because
I was just going to identify some of the areas that we saw as still needing to be considered, but I think what I can leave it at, as I know you've all had a very long day, is that if there are comments that still need to come forward or other, oh, I see a hand.
Okay, let's go to Audrey.
Hey, Sherry, how are you doing?
I'm
I
good.
don't know what the next steps are. After you put this all together, what happens, and do people have to accept it?
I'm sorry, Audrey, I missed just the first part. It cut out.
Once you put this all together, what are the next steps? It's all together in the document. Where does it go next? And do they have to accept it?
At this point,
Who has to accept it?
Sorry, Audrey, at this point, I'm being given a direction to that different PTOs and the independent First Nations at this time want this to be presented to their chiefs. So that to me signals that they want confirmation by their leadership that they do accept this. It could impact, in a sense, their role as a representative at these committees. At this time, it has only been determined that the final draft, once completed, will go back to the Leadership Council for approval. However, we're not fixed on that. This may, if there is a decision that this needs to go to the Chiefs in Assembly at the AOCC, that will be fine. Or this may go back with the restructuring committee and housed with them for further development and brought forward when all of our leadership are in support of the contents of the policy. So it's undefined at this point. Right now, we're just looking at gaining viewpoints.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I see no further questions. I see nothing in the chat coming from the community. So Sherry, if you have any final thoughts, we still have some time. Just want to go back to you
Certainly.
before I close this off.
Thank you. I did want to raise one area that has been raised as concern, and that is around the appointment process that currently exists within the OFNYPC Council, and which will assume have the Knowledge Keepers Council when it's up and functioning. The issue is that they've raised for OFNPC raised is that this policy will interfere or does not support, as it is currently written in the draft that you have, their policy around selecting individuals to sit at OFNYPC or at the AFN Youth Council. So I have made changes based on those issues that this policy will not apply. However, I have learned that I believe it was Anishinaabe Nation does have their own internal policy on how they identify individuals to appoint or for those names to be brought to the Leadership Council to consider. So why I'm raising this is that I want to be clear that if there is an existing policy that Six Nations has that this may conflict with, then we certainly want to ensure that there is no conflict there and that we want to be able to uphold any existing policies that you currently have around the selection process. This is not intended to override or to create barriers, but is supposed to be expansive enough that it is really focusing on roles and responsibility in that evaluation and monitoring process that Wendy has identified as a need.
Thanks for that, Sherry. And what we'll do as a next step is we'll get our director of policy to take a quick view of this in terms of the pieces that may conflict and get back to you in that manner in terms of that piece. So with that, the question from the community just popped up. So I will defer to that question at this time, Council. So there is a question to us as elected council. The previous chief council staff told me two things point blank. One, that COO does not speak for Six Nations, and two, that Six Nations is not a PTO and refer to Six Nations as an independent of independence. What did these comments mean? And give me examples. It confuses me considering SNCC attends AOCC's and AFN assemblies, hence the report tonight. Politically confused. So that question is directed at council. And I'm going to respond by way of my understanding is the council does attend those particular meetings on an information basis. So we do attend those meetings to collect the information at the regional level, also to network with our colleagues across the nation in terms of looking at different projects that we could partner in on and working on it from that alliance standpoint. So just for clarification, there was a number of areas where Council, Six Nations Council has told both COO and AFN that they don't speak for us, but we do attend in terms of the alliances and to collect the information that is presented at that level. So I hope that provides that clarification. And with that, if there's no further questions to Sherry, I'm just going to thank her for her time and also acknowledge, I believe this is your last week with Chiefs of Ontario, and just acknowledge your 13 years of service and thank you for that as well. Now we'll go.
Thank you very much for having me. Have a great night, everyone. And it's been a pleasure working with you, and I look forward to continuing to work with you in my new capacity. Thank you.
Good luck.
Bye.
Nathan? Comment? No, I just wanted to add to what you're saying about the AFN and the Chiefs of Ontario. We have to be sitting there, even though they don't speak for us, because the decisions they're making could impact Six Nations as well. For a lot of the decisions that they make, impact all the First Nations, and that includes us. So we need to be there, although we say they don't speak for us.
Thanks for that intervention, Helen. And I'm going to move us forward, noting the time, 8:20. Trying to get through this as quickly as we possibly can. We are through the delegations, so thank Council for their patience on that. But I'm going to go to move up in terms of the adoption of the minutes of January 12th. They are in your kits. Does Council need a moment to review? Helen?
I'll move the minutes.
All right, moved by Helen, second.
I'll second Malba.
Sorry, Council, I about booted out. Was there a seconder?
Malba did.
Malba.
Okay. Having been moved by Helen, seconded by Malba, all in favor of the minutes of January 12th? Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, motion is carried. Item number 6, recommendation from Building and Infrastructure. I will turn it over to the mover and seconder to introduce this recommendation.
Did I move it, Nate?
Yeah, sorry, moved by yourself and seconded by Hazel.
Can you read it, please? I move.
The motion reads that the Building and Infrastructure Committee recommends to the Six Nations elected council to prioritize the roads repair list in that Six Nations, or that 6-line road between Chiefswood Road and Seneca Road, be moved up on the list and that it is paved as soon as possible.
I second.
I don't even know what a priority list is.
Is Mike Montour here?
Nope.
What about Darren?
I'm here. There's a priority list for all of our capital projects, and we don't obviously have enough money to do our projects, and the list gets longer. So this came about, I understand. I wasn't there for this discussion at the committee level. However, I do believe that Rod Whitlow had a petition brought forward from community. Does that ring a bell, Audrey? Maybe you could speak to it a bit more. Mike is not on the call, but that's what my understanding was, that he brought it forward to get it reprioritized. In fact, we're sitting down next week to go through that list again. This is one of many projects.
Okay, may I suggest, just to move this along, that this motion wait until that work is done and that council see that priority list, and we defer this until that time. Is that okay with the mover and seconder?
Yeah, it's good. It's better that the public works person be here to explain it.
Okay. And Wendy, I believe that was, is that related to your question as well?
Yeah, it was around the priority, the repair list, because there's nothing in our package of what that is. So if we're prioritizing, what are we prioritizing over? Right. If there's a separate motion that we have to move on that road, I mean, that's a separate motion.
Okay, so I'm hearing that as well. So I'm definitely acknowledging and seeing the briefing note from the resident on 6th line, Rod Whitlow. But what I am asking is that, just along with Wendy's point, that if the work's being done next week, that this be coupled with that and then represented back to council so we can look at that priority list and make that determination then. So how does that sound? I'm seeing heads nod. Perfect. Okay.
Can I make a motion? Can I make a comment, Melba?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd prefer to take a second look at this also and have some explanations, because as we know, 7th line was to be paved years and years ago, and as COVID starts to release us, I think buses will continue to ride that road, which is very difficult. So maybe we can look at 7th line. I understand in the past that we had money for 7th line, but it was used in other ways. So I would like to hear about this prioritization too. Thank you.
Okay, Helen.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear that this is being discussed. These roads are being discussed because, as I said earlier in an email, I've been talking about these roads for 17 years. So it's the first time it ever got to the table to even be discussed. Usually I would just put off by, we got no money, or we got to do something else, or we got to do this. So I'm glad it's here. And I really think we need to have a good discussion on all of the roads that aren't paved. And we need to have a good discussion on what we're going to do with 4th line when it caves into the river. Because as you can see, it's very close to doing that. And those residents on 4th line are going to be landlocked because the boundary line is caved into the river already. And if it caves in on our side of the road, then they're going to be landlocked. And we have some elderly people in there. We have young families with kids. So these are all major issues that we need to have. So I'm really glad to see that it's here. And I thank Rod Whitlow for all the work he's done and the petition he got going and everything to get this to the table.
Thanks for your comment.
I'm not familiar with no priority list either. So.
Okay, so moving this discussion along, one final comment goes into Audrey.
Yes, I'd also suggest that we invite Rod Whitlow to attend the meeting as well.
Great
because
suggestion.
Right from the beginning is how many years he's been working on it. Thank you.
Great suggestion, and underscoring that as well for both Tammy and Darren in terms of next steps. So thank you, Council. We are moving into our next agenda item, scheduling. The schedule is in your package. I'm not going to go through it in detail, and I don't see any clarification required. Just quickly over the next 2 weeks, tomorrow we have the emergency control group. That'll be myself. And then 29th, Councillor Helen Miller will be attending the Rapid Housing Initiative Committee at 1 o'clock. And then we'll look to next week, General Finance on the 1st. And then on the February 3rd, we have Human Resources and again, Emergency Control Group. The 4th, Community Standards, and I note for the community that is going to be live streamed, so we encourage folks to come on board to that. And on the 5th, we have the Iroquois Caucus, that's Chief Hazel and Melba, as well as Helen's Rapid Housing Initiative Committee meeting at 1 o'clock. So that's the next 2 weeks for us, pretty busy, and look to Council for the reporting on those pieces. Number 8, quickly political update from my end. The Roma meetings went really well today, and I thank staff for quickly pulling together notes. This morning, I had the opportunity to talk with the minister responsible for tourism and sport. We advanced a number of issues as it relates to, greater support and greater support for individual entrepreneurs within the community as it relates to COVID. We advanced that with the province. We also advanced a number of initiatives as it relates to greater supports for our Indigenous athletes who are also struggling during this time. In the final piece, we had Janice Montour with us and advanced a number of issues pertaining to the Mohawk the museum and the residential school, as well as a number of those pieces there, the Woodland Cultural Center as well. So good meetings on that. We also met with the Ministry of Health, advanced a lot of relationship issues and dealt with a number of challenges that we have between the province as it relates to the Ontario ministry teams. And the final meeting that I've had in particular was with Ministry of Agriculture and advanced our food sovereignty project, looking for partnerships going forward around those particular pieces. So that was my afternoon. Darren, if you want to quickly speak to the infrastructure meeting that you had with Mike, I think that'll wrap up the Roma update.
Yeah, and also had a meeting on the children, community and social services with Arliss as well. So that went very well. Kind of put our pitch in for obviously services, but also, you know, thinking outside of the box. All these funding streams and all these contributions are just not really practical for our needs. So I made that point. Our person-centered care approach, you know, the duty to respond, not to report, all those kind of pieces. So it was really well received, and kind of pulled a message from that, same message from that as well with infrastructure on our shift to planning. You know, First Nations, the point about First Nations having to be fiscally bound to annualized funding arrangements, which is just cripples us. So looking at that, you know, the idea of block funding, longer term commitments, thinking outside the box to accelerate some of our projects and our investment that we need now. So it's good. I mean, we talked in infrastructure. I touched on that, on water, tied that into food sustainability, which you were on that called previously, Nathan. So it was a nice tie-in. We had a couple folks that were on all of the meetings, so that was good. And the other one obviously was broadband as well. So we hammered all those points with Mike, so that was good.
Okay, and just by way of a roll up to council, what we can do quickly is do a quick, just a quick report back, written report on some of those issues and what we advanced in with ministries, and that'll give us a good baseline for further advocacy as we go forward. At this time, I'm going to see if there's any other political updates from any other councillors before we look to adjourn. Seeing none, looking for a motion to adjourn to in camera. Moved by Michelle, seconded by Wendy. All in favor? Is there any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, motion passed. I'd like to thank the community members for attending and for your contributions to the dialogue today. That was so valuable to have your input as we deliberated a lot of these decisions going forward. So again, now we'll go to the community.